はい、皆さん、こんにちは。米国特許セミナー、パテントターミノロジーです。このシリーズでは、特許用語や表現などをできるだけわかりやすく解説しています。講師は、米国特許弁護士であるブライアン・エプスタインさんです。今回は、whereby という表現の使い分けと、so that, such that という表現の使い分けについて見ていきたいと思います。ではまず wherein、whereby について見ていきたいと思います。通常ですね、wherein は何々を特徴とするといった意味で、characterize in that の代わりに使われます。また whereby は結果について説明するためによく使われます。これらの点についてブライアンさんに聞いてみたいと思います。So, ブライアンさん、特徴とする can be translated as characterizing that.However, this translation can create a Jepson-style interpretation in the US. So, to avoid this issue, 特徴とする is translated as wherein. In addition, translators typically use whereby to introduce a result. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so a lot of this concern comes from MPEP 2111.04, Roman numeral 1. And this portion provides examples of claim language that may raise a question as to the limiting effect of the language. So what that means is that, maybe the clauses that are introduced by these terms aren't given patentable weight or substantial patentable weight. And so when they provide these examples, they include wherein clauses and they include whereby clauses, as well as some other ones, I think like adapted to. And so there's a question as to whether applicants should try to avoid these words when translating the phrase tokucho tosuru. So if you look at the MPEP section, it pretty clearly states, it directly quotes that the determination of whether each of these clauses is a limitation in a claim depends on the specific facts of the case. So in other words, there is no clear rule. This is something that's going to be examined on a case-by-case basis. It has to do with, what kind of words are introduced. So, what's going on here? Well, historically, whereby, the word whereby, introduced intended results. So you might have a claim that says, adding carbon to the metal whereby a higher stiffness is achieved. That's the kind of intended result that this was used for. And so I guess because some translators found that tokocho tosuru was introducing these types of intended results, that they should be introduced the same way. So these, I assume, these phrases weren't given patentable weight. And so people tried to change it to be wherein. So wherein carbon is added to the metal or carbon is added to the metal wherein a stronger, or a higher stiffness is achieved. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you say whereby. It doesn't matter if you say wherein. The issue is this intended result type clause. It's not that the particular word. So it doesn't matter if you say wherein. It doesn't matter if you say whereby. It's how these words are used, not the words themselves. If you left out the word entirely, it probably wouldn't matter. It certainly the element would read more clearly with this wherein or whereby with the word wherein or the word whereby included. But the sentence can be written without it, and the same effects will occur. So it really doesn't matter which translation is used. It's more an issue of the type of feature that these words introduce.
Okay. はい。では次に、so that, such that について見ていきたいと思います。これら両方とも、何々するようにといった意味で使われることが多いんですが、これらについて聞いてみたいと思います。So, Brian さん、するように is typically translated into so that and such that. Please share your thoughts.
Sure. So when claims use phrases like so that or such that, the Ben Rishi or U.S. patent attorney is typically attempting to create relationships between different elements of the claim. So you might have something like, the processor processes data so that, I don't know, a higher processing or a faster processing occurs. The issue is that when claims are interpreted under the broadest reasonable interpretation standard, BRI, U.S. examiners tend to ignore these relationships. So, for example, they will, if the claim is set up as like A such that B, the drafting attorney wants the single element to include both A and B. A U.S. patent examiner will frequently look at this type of claim language and separate them so that there's just A and there's just B. And then they will go and find prior art for those different elements. So again, element A might get reference 1, element B might get reference 2, and the examiner will say it's obvious to combine reference 1 with reference 2, so with the result that the combination teaches element A such that element B. That's not what the Ben Rishi want. That's not what U.S. patent attorneys want. We want it to be, A and B in the same reference. We want, A such that B. And so, that's the examiners aren't giving us the interpretation we want. And so the real issue then is that examiners often can find individual elements like A and B at a detailed level, right? And so the applicants must fight to have the examiners consider complex relationships like A such that B as a single feature. It's not impossible, but generally speaking, applicants are unsuccessful when arguing this type of claim language in claims. So in terms of the actual phrases of so that and such that, either translation is probably equally accurate. It doesn't really matter which phrase you choose, similar to wherein or whereby. But what's kind of interesting here is that when I'm given freedom during prosecution, I tend to just eliminate the phrases entirely. I don't typically do that for wherein or whereby. Wherein and whereby, I usually just leave because they don't, in many cases, they don't adversely affect the claim. Certainly during some litigations, accused infringers will, try to argue this kind of issue of wherein not really limiting the claim. But I don't know how persuasive that really is when, that must be done on a case-by-case basis. The difference here with so that and such that is that these words can create unintended consequences because all words in a claim must be considered. So what does that mean? So the idea is that a claim that recites A so that B must be different than a claim that recites A, comma, B. Right? All words in a claim must be considered. We must consider the word so that. We must consider the word such that, the phrase such that. When we're discussing wherein or whereby, it's a single word. Like I said, it does read more clearly. They perform a function in the claim, and so again, I feel like it's a different set of facts. Here, we end up with this disconnect, I think, between prosecution and enforcement. So for prosecution, if your examiner is not giving your examiner probably won't give these patentable weight. Like I said, they'll find element A in reference 1 and element B in reference 2, and they don't give any weight to so that or such that. And so, we're stuck trying to argue the combination of the phrases, or we're adding new things into the claim, amending the claim to overcome the rejection. Once this patent issues, now, if we maintain this so that or such that language, the opposite's going to occur, right? An infringer might argue that these are limiting, and maybe they do, their device performs or has, I guess, performs element A and it performs element B, but theirs doesn't necessarily have this kind of cause and effect relationship, right? They're going to really emphasize this connection between A and B, and they'll come up with some reasoning as to why, although their device practices A and practices B, it doesn't have that so that relationship. So at the end of the day, or at the end of, to summarize, this so that doesn't help during it doesn't help during prosecution, and it might hurt during litigation or other type of enforcement. And so I find it better to just get rid of these phrases. Like they're never, I don't feel like they ever really help the situation. Certainly there's going to be times where we have to keep them. Maybe there's, like a PCT requires a strict translation, or a PPH case, it's filed with this language and we can't take it out, or we've got an AFCP filing and we can't broaden it, and obviously if you strike that out as part of an AFCP filing, an examiner is fairly likely to point to that as broadening the claim. So, I mean, certainly there are going to be times where we can't just eliminate this phrase, but to the extent possible, and to, as long as my applicants are willing to let me take these phrases out, I'm more than happy to just get rid of these phrases. I don't think they really help the claims.
はい。村谷さんありがとうございました。ここまで来たように、特にそうざっと、サッチざっとですね、そんなに気軽に使える表現ではなく、使用には注意が必要だということでした。今回はこれで以上になります。ご質問や扱ってほしいトピックなどがありましたら、YouTube のコメント欄に書いていただくか、スライド最後に記載のメールアドレスまでお気軽にご連絡ください。では本日もありがとうございました。失礼します。
ありがとうございました。